So that's us, and that was us on Oprah. That was about 3 years ago
Yeah.
now. Pretty
It was good.
cool. And the way that it all began is the five of us were friends and coworkers, and we shared this common bond of really living a lie, living beyond our means, individually and combined. We had $50,000 in consumer debt that was on our credit cards, and just different lines of credit that were just eating away at us. And really, I mean, Andrea says this, but we could barely sleep at night. We were in so much debt.
Yeah, it was definitely keeping me up at night because I was spending the most money out of all of us.
Yeah, so we decided to come together. If there's 5 of us in total, 3 of us here today, but we decided to come together as a money group, and we started meeting weekly and talking about our finances. So the first week we all came together, we brought out our Visa statements and our debit statements, and we went through line item by line item and talked about how much debt we were in. And from there, we started meeting weekly. And about 6 months into it, Katie sent an email to the Oprah Winfrey Show. And about 4 months after that, we were asked to be guests on her show to talk about our experience and how we had gotten ourselves out of a tremendous amount of debt.
And the talking about it was so key, and what appealed to Oprah, and what we've tried to achieve with our TV show and our books and everything that we do is just opening the dialogue to talk about money and not feel like you're the only person in the world who isn't making the smartest decisions, is carrying some debt, and maybe isn't just being a conscious consumer and a savvy shopper. So that's why we're here today. We're here today to give you tangible ways that you can save money, make more money, and also protect yourself against potential scams, because the scam and the fraudulent activity that's going on is one of the worst ways that you can lose money. And so we really want people to be aware of how they can avoid that. So we wanted to also share a bit about our stories and who we were, and one of the things that we all kind of agreed on, and this was in our money group, was we weren't conscious consumers. We weren't looking at those numbers and our spending, and that was opening us up to situations where we were exposed to fraud. I was working for a public relations firm and making a decent salary, but spending far more than I was making, and really just avoiding my statements altogether. And I was eating lunch out every single day, spending upwards of $800 in a month on dinners and lunches and just food, and never really checking my bank statements. I realized after my bank finally contacted me that my card on one of the lunch visits I was going on had been copied, and I had no idea. And that was a wake-up call for me to really look at where I was spending my money and how I could be more conscious.
For me, coming into the money group, I had just separated from my ex-husband the year before, and I was definitely an emotional spender. So when I was growing up and I had a bad day, I'd go home, and my mom would say, "I know what will make you feel better. Let's go shopping." Can anyone identify with that? Yeah? So anyway, I carried that lesson into my adulthood, and when I left my marriage, blew through a small settlement I got on sweater sets and traveling, trying to make myself feel better. So on one of these trips, I had used my Visa card to pay for something, and without my knowing, the magnetic strip had been copied. And I got home, and I hadn't been notified by my credit card company. And luckily, this was one of the few times I actually read my bills, because generally I wouldn't even read my bills. I'd just shove them in the microwave and forget about them. So this time I read my bill, and I noticed that someone had used my credit card in a continent away.
And I was one of those people that was spending way more than I was actually making. I was probably spending about $1,500 extra a month. And then I was actually making. And I was one of those very organized people. I had all my bills filed away. But what I wasn't doing, I wasn't reading them, and I certainly wasn't paying them. And I did a lot of thing that I certainly was got taken advantage of was I got an email that I thought was from my bank because it looked exactly like it had come from my bank. I mean, it had the logos, everything. They were doing some updated system stuff. They needed some information, and I didn't even think twice about it. And I sent in my information, and probably a couple of hours later, I happened to be out, and my bank calls me up asking me if I made a purchase for $1,200. And I said no. And luckily, they did contact me because they noticed it was a bit out of my spending pattern to have spent that much on an item. So I was definitely a victim of the email phishing, which I wasn't too proud of.
So these are a few examples of how we were taken advantage of when it came to our identity fraud. And definitely back then we had no idea about fraud prevention. So had we had the information we have today, I think we probably would have been a little more prepared to deal with situations like this. So this is what we're hoping you might take away from today, ideas on how you can protect yourself. So before we move into some of the ways we changed our habits, let's talk about some of the stupid spending we actually made. So this is meant to be a bit of comic relief for you.